I see that the bewitching hour is here, 7 o'clock, Tuesday, May 13th. Call the regular meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals for the City of Bay City to order. This evening we have on my far left, Larry Elliott. On my close left, Chris Greenleaf, myself, William Darby. To my near right is Jacob Silva, and to my far right is Jan Rollins. The first item of business is the approval of the minutes, which were included in a packet delivered to the Zoning Board of Appeals for the April 8th, 2025 meeting. Is there a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
There's a motion to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor of the motion to approve the minutes of April 8th, 2025, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. 5 yea, no nay. Now is the time for a public comment on any agenda item, any non-agenda item that might come up. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to speak on some issue that is not before as part of the business of this meeting tonight? Hearing none, we have two old business cases Z2501 and case Z2502, both pertaining to 900 6th Street under two different requesting persons. And last month they were delayed to this meeting to present further information. I have been informed that the information has not been received, and so we should either we should do something with it. Is there discussion about what we should do?
I make a motion if I could.
Okay, you can try a motion.
Make a motion that we table these two cases, Z2501 and Z2502. Both table them at this time.
To a date uncertain.
Date uncertain.
There is a motion. Is there a second?
I will second.
There is a motion and a second to table the two cases to a time indefinite to be determined. All those in favor, excuse me, let's take a roll call vote.
Member Elliott?
Yes.
Greenleaf?
Yes.
Commissioner Greenleaf? Jacob?
Yes.
Eyes?
Yes.
And Mr. Darby?
Yes. 5 yeas, no nays. It is tabled to a date uncertain. The next item of business for tonight is case Z2503 for 915 17th Street. Juan Lucia Villafranco, applicant. He is requesting a non-use variance from the zoning regulation precluding the enclosure of front porches located closer than 15 feet to front and side street lot lines. Section 122-53 parens C and D state that existing unenclosed porches located less than 15 feet from a front or side street lot lines shall not be enclosed. Is Mr. Lucia Villafranco here, or a spokesman? Can you come up to the podium, sign in, and tell us why you need this?
This is my son, so he will help me out a little bit, okay?
Sign in first, please. Okay, tell us your tale, please.
For me,
Need to tell us why you need this, what happened?
well, I not really use the porch too much, and I decided to close it because when we have a lot of snow,
Could you get right next to the microphone, please?
when we have a lot of snow, I had to shovel it all the time. So it was my reason to decide to close the porch.
Is there something that what happened? You didn't make any inquiries as to whether permits or anything like that was required?
No.
Do we have any questions of the gentleman?
I would just, note that on the application, he did, attempt to fill out the non-use variance standards, which you should have a copy of. I can read the first one for them, which is referring to the strict compliance with restrictions regarding area of setback, frontage, height. In the written response was zoning regulations do not permit enclosed front porches and required front yard. I now realize to be enclosed, the existing front porch would have to be set back at least 15 foot, and mine sets back just under 10 feet. The house was purchased close to 20 years ago, and the family has grown and created a need for additional living space. We considered having to move, but with the housing costs increased, we had to stay in our current home. Moving to a different house was unnecessarily burdensome. And then I could read the others, or do you have a copy of that in your reports? You should, yeah.
Are there any questions, comments? Sure, go ahead.
In our packet, you had supplied, I believe, 2 different drawings of the house and on the property. I couldn't find any difference in them. Was there a reason that there were 2 submitted?
My doing, because I included it as an attachment, and then I also added in at the end of the report as a property sketch, but those would be one and the same.
Okay, thank you, Terry.
You're welcome.
On this drawing, on the left side of the drawing, I don't know if our appellant has seen this, Terry, has he?
Yes.
Okay. It shows, I'm going to call it a bump out from part of the house. That wasn't visible when I went out and looked at the property. Is that something that's old, or is that in compliance? Do we know?
Yeah, that would actually be in compliance, because on the, being on a corner lot, you're required to have the 2 front yards, which in this case is that 15-foot setback. And then the other side yard, you only need to have a minimum of 5 feet. So that would be a compliant addition there, because 5 foot would be the setback.
Okay. Okay, I have another question for the appellant. I guess my question is, what was it that made you want to enclose this porch? What circumstance was there that made you say, I need to enclose this porch and increase the size of my home?
Well, I go back again. The reason I trying to do it is because in some cases, I need a little bit more space to put few things. My house is put small on the inside. And I not really use the porch for sitting, because I use more like the north side in my driveway and my back porch. So that was the reason.
We're having a hard time understanding. Perhaps you could actually speak a little closer to the mic, or bring the mic to you a little bit,
Okay.
and then repeat what you just said so that we can get, I got a little bit of it, but I didn't get to just.
The reason I closed the porch is I'm trying to close the porch is because I need a little bit more space. My house is really small, and of course my kids grown up. And then I kind of decide maybe to use it for something.
So you increased you did the front porch, you enclosed it to give you guys more living space in your home, and that's due because of the increased housing cost that you can't move, as it says in your number one of the standards, correct?
Correct.
Is this space anticipated to be a 12-month-a-year living area?
No. Will be, no, it's not for living area. There's sometimes maybe to put temporary things.
So it's like for storage then, correct?
Yes, correct.
All right.
Yeah, I could have included a picture of before, which would show, that open porch with the columns, the roof already there. So then just built, within that framework or dimension of that covered porch. And then that's when the walls and then the windows were installed. But as the staff report mentioned, it was an open, unenclosed porch.
So the footprint of the porch never changed, basically. The
No.
square footage of the existing front porch is the same as what it is now, besides
Exactly.
closed it to better their situation within their housing
Correct, yeah,
for storage or use or whatever they
Right.
intended it to be, correct?
correct. The dimensions did not change, so it was just putting that wall. And actually, the definition for having that, it would have to be basically an all open porch. The way the definition reads, it's real restrictive to even doing today what would be like an all-seasons room. So it is more restrictive than it had been in the past as far as that requirement, because of how it's defined within the ordinance as being enclosed. That picture clearly shows it's enclosed, but anything other than a railing and columns basically starts to enclose a porch.
That certainly clarifies some of it for me. Other questions, comments?
I have a question. I see windows in the construction. The idea of this storage area is for, I'm assuming, bikes, maybe boxes. I was under the impression, at first glance, this was going to be a room. And also with how the questions were laid out on family, I just didn't realize it was for storage. Is there a possibility for the items that you would like to be stored, perhaps in a shed on the property instead?
Yes, will be more for, like you said, bikes. you know, I don't know, I got a few good bulbs I use because I do landscaping, so it's still like that will be what I've been using.
I have a question. So I'm going to go back to my original asking the setback on the side yard, and you already have some type of bump out from the house. Wouldn't it have been possible to put your storage area alongside of that and have it on the side of the house rather than the front?
Well, maybe because I already got the roof and the porch, and I not really use the roof, the porch. Maybe that's why I kinda decide to close the porch.
One more question for you. The fence that we see in the pictures, and I did drive by your home, is that your fence? The fence that is to the south of your front door?
Yes,
That's your fence, okay. Thank you. Terry, excuse me,
Yes.
can I ask you, the fence that's in the front of the house is a non-conforming fence, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So it probably was put up again without a fence permit?
Well, we weren't sure of the date of construction. At first, I think what caught, the building official who first noticed it was the combination of the fence and, of course, some of the work being done. But we were never able to document when that was installed. And I do know, and I didn't document the time myself, there was a period about 2 years that the city didn't even have a fence permit requirement, because what happened is it was in the building code, and when it was removed from the building code, it took a couple of years for the zoning to pick it up in the zoning code. So there was about 2 years, I believe, that if somebody was to call, we didn't have a fence permit application for somebody to take out.
But we still had code that would not have allowed that fence there?
Well, at the time, there was no code, because when it came out of the building department and we realized back then that the code enforcement office was no longer doing fence permits, that's when the fence permits came to the zoning department, because prior to that, fence permits were actually obtained through the building department. Earlier permits, and then there was a time when...
Do you know approximately when that would have?
No, I
happened?
didn't look that up. It would have been, well, it was in the time period that I was here, so it would have been sometime in the past 20 years, I would say, that we made that switch from the building department to the planning and zoning department. In those 2 years, I don't know the date of when that occurred.
So, Mr. Villafranca, you don't know when you put that fence up? You don't remember?
I just paint it and replace it.
Within the last 20 years, because you say you've lived there 20 years, right?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
Your comment on that?
Sure.
I just want to, in the record, we're not here to discuss the fence and the conformity of the fence. We are here to address the enclosure of that front porch. The fence was never brought into any of our discussion prior to this, so I think when we look at this, we can't be talking about unconforming other things of the property, such as a fence that we don't know when was installed. City's saying that they don't have any records of it being installed, and there was a time where there was no fence permits required.
I'm going to respond to that. There can be conditions with allowing for the variance, and the fence could be part of the conditions, and that's the reason that I was asking the questions, because we have now 2 non-conforming things going on this property. Thank you.
Are we done bickering? Can we get back to this issue? Are there any other questions before we open it up? Thank you. We may have you come back to answer some more questions. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak to this issue one way or the other? You can come up one at a time, sign in, speak into the microphone, please. Thank you.
My name's Chris Meyer. I live directly next door to the gentleman.
Can you speak a little bit closer into the mic,
My
please?
name's Chris Meyer. I live right next door to the gentleman. I'd just like to say that I don't have an issue with this enclosed porch. I understand his yard is fairly small, and he already has a shed there, so I could see why he would need to enclose this porch so he has more storage year-round. I don't really see the need for an open porch. Besides the zoning, I don't really see the point of it, you know. I could see why he doesn't want to put a storage shed next to that property between the houses, because then he won't have any yard at all. The driveway takes up most of his yard, and then the shed takes up a majority of the rest of his backyard as well. So, I mean, if it were me, I would probably try to do the same thing, because he has children. They do play in the yard. His kids play with my kids. They all play in that side yard. I've seen him multiple times. I don't ever see him play on the porch. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Others? Come on up.
Good evening. My name is Antonio Sabatini. I live at 219 North Madison Avenue. Even though I do not live within 300 feet of the gentleman, my stepson does. That's how I found out about this situation. So earlier today, I took a canvas of the neighborhood. One block, because your form says 300 feet of this gentleman's house. I took a canvas of the neighborhood, one block, either way of him, all 4 ways. I found 414 South Monroe, 510 South Monroe, 517 South Monroe, 808 16th Street, 807 16th Street, 419 South Madison, 601 South Monroe, 700 South Monroe, 704 South Monroe, 703 South Monroe, 705 South Monroe, 709 South Monroe, 710 South Monroe. Of course, his house, and right next to him, 909, right next to him would be 909 17th, I believe. Yep, 909 17th Street and 512 Jackson Street. All of those properties have exactly the same thing that this gentleman's trying to do. Exactly the same thing. Some have 10 feet, some have less than 10 feet. Some have, I think the longest one was 12 feet from the sidewalk. From the edge of the sidewalk to the house, to the front of that dwelling, was 12 feet at the most. Most of them were more along 8 feet. Exactly the same thing this man's trying to do. Usually enclosed porch is used for privacy issues. I understand that whoever complained, the complaint that was made, my understanding of it is that they couldn't see what they were doing on the porch and they didn't like walking by or driving by or whatever the situation was and not being able to see what's going on the porch. It's no one's business what I'm doing in my house, on my porch, or anything else. That's why we pay taxes. That's why we buy properties. As property owners, we expect that we're going to have privacy within our house, within our envelope of our yard. That's all this man's trying to do. His family's growing, like he's explained. He's trying to make everything work and not have to buy a whole nother house, especially in today's market. And so he's doing what he can with a space that, as he said, he doesn't normally even use. So if I don't use my porch, enclose my porch, and I can utilize it, not utilizing it as a bedroom, but as, okay, if I need to put something out of the way, we have a space to put it in. Obviously, he doesn't want to, his neighbor stated one reason for not putting a shed up in his yard, and true enough, the man has mostly concrete driveway. That takes up most of the back part. If you're looking at it from an aerial view, takes up most of the back part of his home space there, his yard space. Putting a shed up doesn't really do it either. I can tell you from experience, I live, like I said, 219 North Madison. Our house, our yard has been invaded and stolen from 3 different times. They've had how many shootings in that neighborhood in the last 30, 60 days? They've had how many robberies, how many houses broken into, how many things stolen off porches and stuff. I wouldn't want my porch to be open either and put something out on my porch. I don't know if it's going to be there the next morning or not. So considering the area, South Monroe, and considering that the man he's a landscaper. He landscaped his whole yard. Look at his yard. His yard is immaculate. The man takes care of his property. He doesn't make trouble for anybody. He's just trying to make live within his means and not have to expend more money in order to move his family from probably a neighborhood he loves. He's been there 20 years. I know I wouldn't be staying somewhere 20 years if I didn't like my neighbors. So I think he's doing pretty good. And this board, this group of people have the ability to give him a variance to continue what he's doing. At this point right now, he has done everything with brand new materials. He has everything up to Tyvek and windows in. The only thing after that is to put siding on, and he's done. He's finished. All that money expended for nothing if you make him tear it down. That's not just money in materials that, he'll have to scrap out. That's money literally out of his family's pocket. That is now wasted. So I hope that you guys make the right decision, especially considering you have many, many neighbors, almost 20 houses within a 1-block radius of this man. In fact...
Thank you, sir. I'll be getting to some of those next. I do have some names here.
In fact, within one house of him, his cross-the-street neighbor is enclosed with glass louvers. His neighbor next to him on the other side of his driveway has an enclosed front porch. On the opposite corner from him, kitty corner from him, an enclosed porch. All of these within one house. So I hope you guys can give him the variance and let the man enclose his house and take care of his family. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
I do have 4 that were received by phone-in. The property owners at 500 South Monroe, the Sattlers, both expressed what he has done for the property and are in favor of it. And Amy Marciniak from 507 South Monroe describes the same thing as far as supporting, with some comment, the variance. And last, I have Commissioner Tenney, Fourth Ward Commissioner, called and said supports the variance.
Thank you. If there's no one else, is there any, should we say, discussion from the board before we close the public hearing? Is there any questions that are unanswered? Hearing none, I guess we'll have a motion to close the public portion of the meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Been a motion and a support to close the public portion of the meeting. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. No nays. 5 yeas. Motion passes. Is there a comment by any of the board?
I have one comment. I believe 601 South Monroe Street, kitty corner, that appeared to be already existing. What I'm saying is that, was that a recent modification? Because I would assume it was grandfathered in. On my own time, I looked up the history of the neighborhood, and most houses built around this time was between the years 1910 to 1920. And my question is, all these buildings that are within that 15-foot clearance, were those there during that time, pre-existing, before the ordinance?
Yes, the answer would be yes. Yep. The first full ordinance that had some substance to it was 1941. I believe there was an ordinance in the early 30s, but you know, that might have been 5-6 pages at the most during that time. It wasn't until like 1925 that communities started doing zoning, so a lot of these were pre-built before the ordinance.
Larry?
I have a couple of things, not questions, but comments, before I actually start getting into, or before we start getting into the 5 variances that we need to address. First, one of the speakers mentioned the cost to tear down this if we don't approve it. Unfortunately, and I apologize for being as blunt as what I'm going to be, we can't consider that. The fact is, had you gone through the proper process to start with, we would have dealt with this before we started it. So if there's cost to tear it down, if it's not approved, unfortunately, sorry for that, but I don't think we can consider that.
Right, that can't be the sole reason.
Correct.
Or, you know.
Second, and this is to the city staff, if a commissioner calls in with support or against one of these items, I do not expect to see Commissioner Tenney, Fourth Ward Commissioner, on this sheet. That would seem to me, at least from appearance, that a commissioner is trying to influence this board. If they want to call in, they can state their name and their address like everybody else.
That is true. And a commissioner has been admonished for that in the past by Steve Black.
And I will say this for the record, I'm not considering his comment in my decision tonight.
Okay.
It's irrelevant to me based on that. And I say that as a former city commissioner.
Mm-hmm.
So now on to item number 1, strict compliance with the restrictions governing area setback. unreasonable property, getting down to unreasonable burdensome. In my opinion, if he were to try to expand it on the side, he's got issues. If he tries to expand it out the back to get the storage space and the space he's looking for, it is going to be a more unnecessary burden on him from a financial standpoint than enclosing the front porch, which he's doing. And I say that based on the fact he's already indicating he can't move because of the financial cost involved. So enclosing a porch that's already got its foundation, already has its footprint, and I apologize because I may have missed it. The supports and roof were already there, if I'm not mistaken, which means this is even a more economical impact to him, and does not really impact his use of this property. And I'm going to go through all 5 of these, so I apologize to my fellow board members. The variance will do substantial justice to the applicant as well as other property owners. Driving around the area myself, I saw at least 4 houses with enclosed porches that very well appeared, and I didn't take out a tape measure and do it, but appeared to be less than 15 feet a setback within a 2-block area. I didn't write down the addresses, I'm sorry. I know some of the other ones stated. I saw those as well, but they appeared to meet the setback requirements and therefore weren't an issue. So I do believe this will do substantial justice to the applicant. It allows him to use his property, allows him to store items and for his expanding families, and it will do substantial justice to other property owners, especially in that area where it looks like I saw one of the neighbors enclosing a fence or working on their front porch, and it looks like they were enclosing it as well. So it's probably helping that area. A lesser variance that will not give substantial to relief. The footprint of this porch is already there. It was already roofed. A lesser variance will actually mean he probably has to tear out part of his existing roof. So I do not believe a lesser variance will give a substantial relief. The need for the variance is due to the unique circumstances peculiar to this property and not due to general neighborhood conditions. This is the one I'm struggling with at this moment because I'm not sure how much uniqueness is to this property other than the fact that front porch was already there, and in his backyard would be very narrow to add to, especially with a concrete driveway already there. And the fact that it is on a corner lot and has very little yard to start with. It's a bad thing with city lots, though, because they are relatively small, narrow areas. And the problem in resulting need for the variance has not been self-created. It's self-created in one sense, and in fact, he did this without actually going through the permit process to start with. However, had he done that, we'd still be here, so that's a moot point. Not self-created in the sense that that porch being roofed and already having a footprint was already there and makes the most economical and realistic sense to add on to that house. So it is not self-created in that aspect. That's all I have at this point.
Thank you. Other comments? I think you spelled it out very well, Larry. Thank you for doing such a nice job. Other comments before we close it for a vote? If there are no other comments, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to close.
A motion to close the discussion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second to close discussion. Is there, let's go for all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. 5 yea, no nay. Is there a motion on the floor for variance or to accept or deny?
I will make a motion that based on the foregoing and previous discussion, and based on the staff reports and the information provided us, that the ZBA grant the variance as requested by the applicant.
There's a motion on the floor to approve the request of the applicant. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion on the floor and a second to approve the variance as requested. Shall we have a roll call vote, please?
All right, Commissioner Elliott,
Yes.
Commissioner Greenleaf,
Yes.
Commissioner Sova,
No.
Commissioner Rise,
No.
and Commissioner Darby.
Yes. 3 yes, 2 no. I believe they need four votes, is that correct?
Well, you've got 3 for approval and 2 denied, so it would be approved.
Okay, this is not a 4-vote request.
No, that would be for use variance.
Okay, all right. I was unsure of that. There's 3 votes in favor, 2 votes opposed. The request is authorized. Thank you, but we need to, is there anything else that needs to be on the agenda?
No, I have no other business.
Is there a meeting for next month?
You know, let me take this time to announce that in June, we are going to have a zoning 101, and we are under contract right now with Giffel Webster's, and they are working with the Planning Commission to create a new zoning ordinance, and we are going to have a meeting where for sure the Planning Commission and the City Commission are going to meet. So we'll have tables for them, but you're more than welcome to attend the meeting as a zoning board of a member, and we are going to bring you into the process a little bit later once some of the stuff gets fleshed out a little bit, because we'll be having conversation about porches and setbacks and different things like that, and looking at the records to see, what past cases were issues, and maybe look at, ordinance changes to either help or address some issues for maybe they don't have to come to the Zoning Board of Appeals. So there is that connection of the Zoning Board of Appeals to the zoning ordinance, obviously, but the Planning Commission has the authority to actually create it with the City Commission. But I do want you guys to know that we will be inviting the Zoning Board of Appeals to various meetings throughout the year as we develop that zoning ordinance. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Hearing no more business before this board, is there a motion to adjourn?
Make the motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion to adjourn and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. 5 yeas, no nays, we stand adjourned.
Right, we wouldn't have a meeting. We say that last part? No. Right, yep. So what would happen is, well, we will still expect that the applicant or the appellants bring in the information, so the goal is to have that meeting. And that's what, the email that Tony had put together to the parties, represented, it clearly stated what was required, the deadlines that were required to get this decision made for them. Well, no, because, the other gentleman does have an active application that he's, being held up with. And it's not that difficult to probably get some numbers on there from the engineer. So Tony and I will make sure we get them moving on what they need. Yep, we're adjourned. All right, let me